Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we are exploring the darkest, most dangerous corner of the bodybuilding underground, 2,4-dinitrophenol or DNP. This is not a dietary supplement or a steroid, and it's certainly not a selective androgen receptor modulator like codeine, which we covered last episode. This is a literal industrial explosive, yet people are swallowing it daily to shed body fat. We are going to break down its terrifying mechanism of action, the historical data behind it, and why this chemical is universally considered a metabolic death sentence. Let's rewind the clock to see how we got here. 2,4-dinitrophenol was heavily utilized in munitions factory during World War I to manufacture artillery shells. Medical officers soon noticed that factory workers exposed to the chemical dust were sweating uncontrollably and losing massive amounts of weight. By the 1930s, researchers at Stanford University decided to market it as the world's first anti-obesity drug. Over 100,000 patients were prescribed this compound. However, the experiment ended in tragedy. By 1938, the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act issued a total ban because patients were rapidly developing severe cataracts, permanent vision loss, and literally cooking themselves to death from the inside. It remained buried for decades until underground internet forums resurrected it for extreme fat loss phases. To understand how an explosive burns fat, we have to look at cellular respiration. Within your cells, mitochondria produce an energy currency called ATP through a complex pathway known as oxidative phosphorylation. DNP acts as a chemical protonophore, which means it shuttles protons across the inner mitochondrial membrane and completely collapses the electrochemical gradient. Instead of converting this cellular gradient into usable ATP energy, the reaction is violently uncoupled, and all that potential energy is dissipated as pure heat. Let's use a real-world analogy to make sense of this. Imagine you put your car in neutral and press the gas pedal completely to the floor. The engine revs aggressively. It consumes an enormous amount of fuel, and the engine block gets dangerously hot, but the vehicle doesn't move an inch. That is exactly what DNP does to your basal metabolic rate. Your body desperately burns through carbohydrate and fat stores just to maintain basic cellular functions, generating lethal amounts of thermal energy in the process. Considering that, why do some bodybuilders risk their lives for this chemical? The answer lies in its raw, unmatched thermogenic power. Clinical data demonstrates that DNP can elevate a user's resting energy expenditure by astonishing 30 to 50%. To put that into perspective, standard thyroid medications like T3 or stimulants like clenbuterol might raise your metabolic rate by 10 to 15% at best. Users on DNP experience an accelerated weight loss of 1.5 to 2 pounds per week on standard clinical doses, while extreme bodybuilding protocols often yield a drop of 10 to 15 pounds in a matter of weeks. It forces the oxidation of fat faster than any known substance on Earth, but at terrifying physiological cost. This hypermetabolic state is exactly what makes the drug so devastating. The classic clinical triad of acute DNP toxicity includes profuse diaphoresis, tachycardia, and tachypnea. In simpler terms, You experience uncontrollable sweating, a rapid resting heart rate, and severe hyperventilation. Because there is no negative feedback loop in body to stop this mitochondrial heat production, internal cold temperatures can rapidly soar up to 111 degrees Fahrenheit or 44 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, the proteins in your brain and organs literally begin to cook and denature, causing multi-system failure. Chronic exposure also leads to the rapid formation of cataracts, permanent hearing loss, and a distinct sickly yellow discoloration of the skin and bodily fluid caused by the nitrate derivatives. The pharmacokinetics of this compound makes it a ticking time bomb. The half-life is highly variable from person to person, but it averages between 14 to 18 hours. Because of this extended clearance time, first-order kinetics dictate that the drug will dangerously accumulate in the bloodstream with repeated daily dosing. Underground protocols usually suggest oral doses of 150 to 300 milligrams per day, but because of the accumulation effect, a dose that feels tolerable on day 1 can easily push blood plasma level into the lethal range by day 5. This is why those who survive it rarely run cycle longer than 2 to 3 weeks. The extreme lethargy and toxic heat simply become physically unbearable. The physical results of a DNP cycle are undeniable, but they carry an incredibly heavy functional tax. You will lose an immense amount of adipose tissue, but you will lose your ability to perform basic human tasks. Because cellular metabolism shifts to rapid anaerobic glycolysis to survive, intramuscular glycogen is completely and systemically depleted. Lifting heavy weights become neurologically and physically impossible. Users look aggressively flat, feel perpetually exhausted, and frequently report waking up having sweat entirely through their mattress. It is the exact opposite of a stamina boost. DNP completely strips you of all functional athletic capacity. Here is the most terrifying scientific reality about DNP. The therapeutic window between fat loss and death is razor thin. A blood concentration of just 28 milligrams per liter is universally fatal, and there is no pharmacological antidote available in any hospital. An international survey of poisons centers across 38 countries analyzed 456 recent exposure cases, revealing a staggering overall case fatality rate of 11.9%. Over 60 deaths were documented historically, but recent years have shown a massive spike in mortality among young bodybuilders trying to bypass the hard work of dieting. If you overdose, emergency rooms can only administer aggressive ice baths and intravenous fluids, hoping your organs do not shut down before the chemical naturally clears from your system. To summarize, DNP is a dark historical mistake that tragically found its way into modern fitness culture. It uncouples your mitochondrial function, burns fat at an unnatural rate, and leaves a very real trail of multi-organ failure and fatalities in its wake. The physiological damage definitively outweighs the temporary visual benefits. It makes harsh sword like trembling look like child's play in comparison. If you found this data heavy breakdown educational, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share this video to spread awareness about these dangerous underground compounds. Stay safe, trust the scientific process, and I'll see you in the next video.